Well, good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Peter Frank and I'll be leading our session today, which is titled Creating a Custom Worship Bulletin with Lutheran Service Builder. Again, my name is Peter Frank. I am the Senior Marketing Manager for Church Supplies here at Concordia Publishing House. I've been working with our group for about 2.5 years, give or take a few months, with Lutheran Service Builder, which has given me the full experience of learning this new online version. Now, I know there are probably many of you who've been using Builder longer than I have, and so I'd love to hear any suggestions or ideas you have from the previous versions. If something comes up or if there's questions, or if I say something you're like, actually, this works out even better. So feel free to share that information with me. I've been with our publishing house for about 11 years, or a little over 11 years now. Now you may notice, that I have a kind of a casual attire on today. Today on September 11th, which obviously has a lot of meaning for the horrific attacks that occurred in 2001, has had meaning for us here at the publishing house for many years before that, for a good thing. So it's kind of a bittersweet day for us as we remember the loss of life that occurred quite a few years back now, going on, 17 years now. But 149 years ago today, the publishing house was founded or had the official dedication. And so we celebrate this day every year and thank God for the blessings he's given us as a publishing house. And as we move forward into our 150th year this year, we are celebrating that. So you may hear more about that. That explains my casual attire of a polo shirt today. So pardon that, I tend to be a little bit more professional as I present, but today is a different kind of day. So feel free to reach out to me and my contact information there on the screen. Email is the best way to get a hold of me. A few housekeeping items before we begin. I'm planning about 50 minutes for presentation. I'm assuming this presentation will have many questions because it's going to be rather unique to your situation. As we talk about things that are custom, obviously it's going to be things that are unique to your church. So feel free to ask questions. We've got about 10 minutes planned to answer those, but I do ask you to ask those questions throughout. You can go ahead and put them in the queue. We've already got one. I was able to answer it beforehand. I won't be able to answer these, at least in the chat during the webinar, because otherwise you'll just watch me typing it, and that's not very exciting. So feel free to ask them here. I'll answer them verbally at the end, and if we have any that I don't get to, I'll try to follow up with an email later on this week. We are recording this webinar, and we will be sharing that recording later on. So keep an eye out in your email. I'll be sending a follow-up email probably tomorrow morning. I don't think it'll get out today. And that'll have a link to the recording, and you can share that with others at your congregation. We'll also be putting this in our resource center later on today, or later on, I guess that'd be tomorrow. And so you could watch it there as well. So if you are watching the recording, thanks for joining us after the fact. Sorry you couldn't be here live, but those of you who are here live, you get the advantage of asking those questions. All right, so Lutheran Service Builder. I'm assuming most of you are familiar with what it is, but for the one or two of you who may not know what it is a web-based program that allows churches to quickly and easily plan services, create custom bulletin inserts or interiors and inserts if you want it. We'll talk about that a little bit. Export presentations and playlists and conform with copyright requirements. Now today our focus will be on bulletins and bulletins only. So while it does do presentations and playlists, we're not going to get into that today. All right, so I always come up with a few assumptions about my audience before I present. It helps me kind of focus my attention on who I want to speak to. So I'm assuming you understand the basics of the liturgy. We're not going to go through the details of which each of these things are. I'm not the expert at that either, so it's probably wouldn't make for a great presentation, although I've done some presentations on that before and rely on the research and understanding of others. But I am assuming you are new to the online Lutheran Service Builder. So even though you know the liturgy, I'm assuming that you're not as familiar with the online version. If you have been using it for the last couple months since we released it, if you are a field tester and have been using it even longer, you'll know most of these things. This is really for the person who is trying to get up and running with the new version, or maybe has never used Builder at all before. So just wanted to clarify that. So for our expert users out there, you may not gain as much as somebody who's coming in with less knowledge. I do assume that you have a subscription or a free trial already so that you can kind of follow along. I'm not going to have you complete certain tasks, but I know for many people it's good to be able to look at this while I'm speaking so that you can see exactly what I'm talking to when I'm pointing to different things on the screen. So if you don't already have a trial, you can go and start a free one today at lutheranservicebuilder.com. The only thing you won't be able to do with the trial version is export, but you'll be able to plan your services, format the bulletin, formats, try out some of those things. It just will stop you at the export. And I know that can be frustrating, but that's why we offer the subscription so that you can go even farther. All right, now I'm going to ask if you could tell me a little bit about yourself. We've got a good crowd here today. So the first thing I'd like to find out is what role you have in the church. And we know that many people wear many different hats. So let me know what your primary role is. That should be going out to everybody. Yeah, good, that seems to be working. If you can just let me know what role that is. Looks like we've got a fairly even split at the top there. I don't know, administrators is kind of taking the lead. And then we've got pastors next, church musicians after that, and a few called workers and others. So just about everybody has voted. So I will go ahead and close that. I will share that with you so that you've got an idea. So we have 43% administrators in that role, 33% are pastors, another 14% are church musicians, and then we've got tied at 5% called church worker and other. So very good. Thank you very much for that information. That is very helpful. That's probably a few more pastors than I expected, so that's good to know. All right, the next one, are you currently using Lutheran Service Builder in your congregation? And I should clarify, I do mean the online version. So if you're currently using the online version of Lutheran Service Builder, if you are not, that is okay. I know a lot of people use these webinars to kind of check out the new version, see if they're ready to get up and running with that. If you are subscribed to Lutheran Service Builder 2, moving to the online version is no additional fee whatsoever. So I've got some information at the end on how to get started with that. All right, very good. I'm not going to share this, but it looks like 2/3 are yes and 1/3 is no. So that is very good. Thank you for that information. So for the third of you who haven't yet, stick around at the end. I'm going to give you the information on how to get started next. All right, I'm going to leave that there. I've always got a few other questions I could ask, but I don't want to shortchange our presentation today. So the outline for today. First off, we're going to plan a service, and we're going to plan out for 2 weeks from now, or about a little less than 2 weeks, for the 23rd. So we'll plan that service out. We'll select the different elements. I'll show you how to do that. That's the core part of getting the bulletin ready, is figuring out what to include in there. Then we'll choose to edit the formatting, and that'll be done in 2 different ways. It'll be how do the elements display, but then really the ultimate goal that we're doing is creating a custom format for your church that you can reuse week in and week out. Finally, I'll show you how to export that content. And there's not a lot to there. It's just a one-click button, or maybe 2 clicks. You click export and you select the file format. It's really easy, but we'll go through some of the challenges depending on the type of format you're looking to export. So with that, let's go ahead and begin. All right, now this is the main screen. It is the calendar view. I'm going to zoom in a little in my browser so you can see better, and you have that option as well. So if you ever find Builder to not have large enough text, have no fear, just zoom in a little bit. It'll adjust accordingly. It is a responsive design, meaning depending on your device, it will change the screen but still be usable. So not everything is usable on mobile. We have kind of blocked off the things that are not practical on phones, but certainly on a small laptop or a tablet, it works great. All right, so we're going to go to the 18th Sunday after Pentecost, September 23rd, and that is the service that we are going to plan today. So you'll see here the first thing that you get to when you come here is the propers for the day. The Old Testament reading from Jeremiah, we have the Psalm, the Epistle, and James, the Gospel from Mark, introit, collect of the day, gradual verse. All of that is available for you to see, and is a nice reference point if you're looking ahead. Now, the next step is kind of a new step for us. It's to plan the service. And so while there was a level of service planning within Lutheran Service Builder 2, this takes a very different approach in the online version, where you plan out kind of the structure of the service without getting into the individual elements. So by clicking plan the service, it takes me to the service plan. Makes sense, right? So the readings are here. There's those same readings, although it doesn't display them in great detail. And we can add readings or change readings. So if I click on the reading, so here's the reading from Mark, I can go and change out if maybe I wanted to go into Luke or something like that. I don't know, maybe Luke 4. I could change that to Luke 4. I don't need to do that. I can go ahead and add the reading back in. Whoops. And see, suggested readings for Pentecost 18. Sometimes I'll get that question. What if I want to go back to what was originally chosen? All you have to do is X out and go to the suggested readings. There we go. So you can see here that there are some other days if you're choosing a different day in the church year. Of course, we chose Pentecost 18, or the 18th Sunday after Pentecost. The next thing that you'll do is add your hymns. So I'll go here under hymns and click add hymn, and it'll give me a number of different suggestions. So the hymn of the day is like a proper, although not everyone uses that. So we put that at the top as an option, but we don't pre-select any hymns. Obviously, there's a lot of factors that go into which hymns are played at or are included in each service. So we don't want to make any assumptions, although it's a pretty safe assumption that the readings are going to be selected. But let's say you choose the hymn of the day. The next thing you can choose is based on the suggestions of hymns for the readings, based on the propers for the day. I should clarify that if you add a different reading to the mix, it's still going to be based on the readings for the propers, not the readings that you've selected here. So maybe you go ahead and delete Mark and replace it with something from Luke. It's still going to show the hymns for the propers. So it's really based off of the assigned readings for the day. Then you also have the option for other suggested hymns that might fit with the theme of the day. Now, I'll often be asked the question, well, where do these other suggestions come from? Well, let me show you real quick. I'll go into my browser here. At cph.org, you can find the worship planning book. This is year B. We're still in year B till the end of November. But this is a planning book that gives you a lot of these same kind of details. So I'll pull up this book here and I'll scroll down. I should have probably scrolled down ahead of time, down to September 23rd. Here we go. 18th Sunday after Pentecost, which is also known as Proper 20. So it's kind of the ID for this day in the church here. And I'll zoom in a little bit. You'll see here that it gives you the readings with some central themes, the hymn of the day, the collect. It doesn't give you all of the propers, just some of the key ones. Hymns for the readings, and it'll tell you whether it's Old Testament or the epistle or the gospel, and then other hymns. So that's where this is coming from. So these other hymns that are in there are tied back into the themes of these readings or themes of this service. So they may not be directly tied to those readings. Now, this also has other suggestions for music, kind of a place for you to plan all of this out, just like in Service Builder. And we know many people use these two resources hand in hand. They serve the same purpose. They each have a few different things in it. So that's where those other suggested hymns come. Now you can go in here and just choose one. We'll add another hymn and we'll go down to the readings and Father, we thank you thee, and choose another one down here. Let's see, blessed Jesus at your word. Now, what you can also do is use this search and see, okay, so here are some other ones. These are, remember, we showed it was Pentecost 20. That is the propers for the day. So we could go into holiday and do a colon and quotes and do Pentecost 20. Oops, did I do that wrong? Let me double check that. I tested this before. Sorry. Proper 20. There we go. That is a valid search. It turns green when it's a valid search. So proper 20, not Pentecost 20. Sorry about that. It's Pentecost 18. You can see where I'd get confused. They're really close. So then what we could also do is do something like topic and say beginning of service. So an appropriate, we'll click enter to give the search results. So remember we're in year B, so 3-year lectionary B, open now these gates, or blessed Jesus at your word. Looks like I was right on choosing that one. So we could choose any one of those. Let's go in and say, all right, we're already at That, I believe it is close of service, yes. Are there any hymns for that? There we go. Oh, nope, not for B. That's all right, we'll still select it. So I'll go and go back to the beginning of the service. So topic, beginning of service, and I forget already what, blessed Jesus at your word. All right, we'll go add another hymn in there just so that we've got something. We'll do the Lamb. All right, so there's a lot of different ways to select your hymns, and we've got some more training on search that we can put in there, but I like to show that as you're planning the service because that really comes into having that full outline ready to go when you go and build your service. These are the things that everybody, regardless of their format, will want to include. Then we have order of service, which is next, and right now it's empty. You have all these different options here from Lutheran Service Book. We're going to stick with Divine Service Setting 1 right now, and then we'll customize a version of that, which will then become our version of Divine Service Setting 1. This version is straight from Lutheran Service Book, and it's certainly good, but most churches don't follow it exactly to a T, and I'll show you why in a little bit. Finally, if there's any additional rites that are going to be included in the service, maybe the baptism rite, that is a place where you can go right here and add that in and say, okay, there's going to be holy baptism today. And this is really just in that service plan so that you're looking ahead. And if you start having 2 or 3 rites, then you might want, maybe don't have special music that day or a long children's message or a children's message at all. Finally, you've got notes here, and this is what you could put in there for like who is preaching. You could add additional notes about the theme, or if you have the sermon title, really anything that you want to include from a planning level that is not already listed above. All right, I hope that makes sense. It looks like we've got several questions coming in, which is good. Just a reminder, feel free to put in any questions that you have as we go. I'll get to those at the very end. So the next step we're going to do is go and click in the top right corner where it says Prepare Bulletin. And when I click on that, my whole screen changes and it's going to load the service. And this is really the meat of the presentation today, how to get this to look exactly like you want. So we have formatted this screen or designed the screen in a way to look like a word processor, even though it is not exactly a word processor. And you can tell that right away when you start to go in and hover over this, is that the sections or the elements will be highlighted as a group. They are not, you can't just click and type over them. There are no formatting tools. If you want to make something bold or italics, that's where that word processor experience ends. But it's a nice reminder that this is being exported to be printed. And right now it goes with the default format. So under document, you can see there's the default bulletin format. And we've got a few other options. We'll create a new one in a little while. So stay tuned, we're coming back to that. But right now we're gonna just go ahead and finish planning the service so we have all the elements in place. So you have different sections here. This is a heading. So confession and absolution, the service of confession and absolution, then the service of the word, and finally the service of the sacrament. And that is farther down. There you go, right there. Now, many people will choose not to include those because while there's great theological meaning for this and how that works, it can be confusing when you start thinking, well, wait, isn't this one service? Well, no, not really, but that doesn't necessarily need to cause confusion that day. So you might choose to delete these. So we'll take out confession and absolution, we'll take out service of the word, and we'll take out service of the sacrament. That doesn't mean we're taking out the elements, we're just taking out the headings. All of the pieces are still there. We're just formatting it to be custom for our church, obviously the theme for today. Now you may say, okay, hymn of invocation first. We're going to choose that. When I click on that, you'll see there are my suggestions, and we're going to choose Blessed Jesus at your word and select that. Now that one here has a number of great things to talk about. First off, you have 4 stanzas. The 4th stanza has the Trinity symbol, which for many congregations, or dare I say most congregations, that is used to stand for a verse that praises the Trinity. And that's why we put that in there. It kind of has a dual meaning of the triangle for the Trinity, but it's also the up to stand up. And we're going to sing, as we sing in honor of the Trinity, we'll stand up to do that. So that's that kind of that dual meaning there. And that is now included where it previously wasn't. So if your church doesn't stand up, you can just explain to people that that is there to indicate it's a Trinitarian verse. So the next thing you can do with this is choose to not have all the verses, or stanzas, pardon me, stanzas. So you can see there's up here, we have the option to change the number of stanzas. Maybe we're taking out stanza 3. You can do that. You also have the option to, rather than just display the text, show the melody. And I'll click melody, and it'll show that, and it'll still have stanza 3 removed. You've got a couple other elements that you can modify here. You have the caption, which is the name of the hymn or name of the element as a more general sense, and then the subcaption over here, which right now by default shows the stanzas. And we'll look at that in a little while too. But you've got these different ways of formatting the single element. And this is even before we get into the style sheet or the formats for the entire bulletin. All right, let's continue down. We've got a couple rubrics. Now this one here, the sign of the cross may be made by all in remembrance of their baptism. That's a great thing to have in there, but it may not be the common practice in your church. And so you may not choose to include that. So we'll delete that. In this case, we already are standing for the Trinitarian verse. Again, if that's the practice in your church. So you may choose to delete that as well. Now, I know these are things that pastors and administrators think about regularly as they're already creating the bulletin. All right, when are we sitting? When are we standing? That kind of thing. So I'm calling out some of this stuff because while it's all good and may actually be happening, there's different factors at play in the direction for the congregation. All right, so now we get down into the invocation. So I'll click on this section and you'll see up at the top, invocation shows there. Now, the way that Lutheran Service Book has these divine services, it doesn't always display the caption. So we're doing the default format, which says that it's not to be displayed, but I can choose to put that in by clicking on caption there. Now, we can also do this, invocation in exhortation. We could clarify each one of those if we wanted to. Or we can say something like confession and absolution, which goes all the way through here because there's confession of sins and there's the absolution, and we could remove some of these other rubrics. So maybe you still want to have the silence for reflection on God's word and for self-examination in there, but you want to clarify to the congregation that this is all part of confession and absolution. That's one way that you can do that. You can also say, well, yes, I know this is an LSB 151, but I don't need that subcaption, so I'm just going to double click on it and delete it. So you've got various ways of communicating the same information. All right, we'll scroll down here next. Now you'll see here for the absolution, oops, jump down on my screen. Absolution here is great. Now you might, like my congregation, you might have a vicar. I know there's not that many vicars to go around, and so we're very blessed to have one. And it often gives our pastor a weekend off, or maybe a Saturday off if there is no Lord's Supper. So in that case, rather than going with absolution, as a called and ordained servant of Christ. Well, a vicar can't say that. He is not called nor is he ordained. He might be called by the Lord, but he's not called by that congregation. So we'll click this little arrow to the left side. There's a blue line at the arrow, and we can go and change that instead to the declaration of grace, which is a way to point to Christ just as the absolution is, but it's a different way of pointing. It's a way that lay people can point to Christ's grace that he bestows upon us. So you could do that there. These little boxes to the left, those are when you have an option of what to display. Now, it can be a little confusing because right now, in this case, the caption is not being displayed. And I can choose the caption for each of these, and it lets me know what's going on. But again, that's all about formatting. That's not about the content at all. So I'm going to stick with absolution. I'm going to remove the caption, and we're going to move forward. All right, next we have the introit, or we could have a psalm, or we could have an entrance hymn. Depends on what you'd like to do at your church. You've got the Kyrie, and then you can do the Gloria and Excelsis, or another option group. This is the feast. There's a variety of different reasons why you might want to choose one or the other. I'm not going to get into that today, and we'll continue to go down here. Salutation and collect of the day, and then everyone sits. So you can go back and see standing, and so we've been standing from the beginning. We will remove this standing because we're still standing until we get down to sit. All right, next we have the readings, Old Testament reading. Now, this is how it is shown in the Lutheran Service Book for Divine Service Setting 1, where you have the reading and then this is the word of the Lord. You might have a different kind of responsorial, if you will. Up here, up at the template level, you can see what other options you have. So this is a custom template that I made about the gospel. That certainly won't work here, but you could have with introduction, Old Testament. So I'll click on this one, and it'll now say the Old Testament reading is from Jeremiah chapter 11, and then the reading comes into play, and then the ending. You can see the same kind of thing for the epistle or the gospel, or you could just say daily office. So a reading from Jeremiah chapter 11. That could be for all three readings. You can also create your own. We'll look at this very briefly later on under my worship resources. But this is a new thing that we haven't had before and can really save some time and add some consistency in formatting. All right, so we'll continue down. Then there's the psalm. There's the epistle. We'll go with that same kind of introduction, but do it for the epistle. There we go. Then the Alleluia and the verse, which is another option group. We could do Alleluia and verse for Lent, although it's not Lent. Verse of the day, and then track, which if you review it, it says this is usually omitted during the Pentecost season. So we will not include that. We'll just do Alleluia and verse. And then we have the Holy Gospel, which already has the introduction in there. So that is one of those unique things about Divine Service Setting 1, is that it predefines that for the Holy Gospel, but not for the Epistle and Old Testament. All right, now we get down to the Hymn of the Day and the Sermon. And the Sermon is where you could put the theme of the day. What is our theme of the day according to the Worship Planning Book? The need for humility and meekness. We could do something like that. We'll just go ahead and put that in. Probably not the best sermon title you've ever heard, but that's okay. We can even go into proper form would be appropriate. So you can type in your subcaption here and it will flow over to the left as much as it can unless you have your caption going too far. So that is one way to use that. Oh, I almost forgot about the Hymn of the Day. We'll click Hymn of the Day and choose Lord of Glory, You Have Brought Us. And we're going to go with the melody for that. And we're going to sing all 4 stanzas. All right, continuing down, we have the Creed, the Nicene Creed, or the Apostles' Creed, or if you're feeling like you need to fill space, or maybe it's Trinity Sunday. It's not in this situation. There we go. You could go with the Athanasian Creed. We're going to stick with the Nicene Creed today. All right, next you have Prayer of the Church. Now this is a fun one, and I always like showing this example because a lot of people don't know about this. If you already know about this, sit tight, it'll only take a second. But the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod Office of Worship puts out Prayer of the Church called Let Us Pray. It is a standard set of prayers for the daily service or for the Sunday service, and they make it available for free on their website. Well, in working with them, we have taken those files that typically come out as Word files, and we put them on LutheranServiceBuilder.com. I think .org works too, but we should say .com. So LutheranServiceBuilder.com, if you scroll down to the very bottom under Downloads, we put them as LSB files, or Lutheran Service Builder files. Right now, it's a downloadable file that you can upload into Lutheran Service Builder and use. In the future, it's going to be more integrated. But for right now, you'd go to our website, go down to the bottom for downloads, and pick the download that you'd want. Before you leave this page, though, I encourage you to subscribe, because if you put your email in there, we'll send you an email when the new ones are available, so you don't have to check back regularly. And I think we're due to get new ones by the end of this week, because we're getting pretty close to the end of these. But I'm going to download the 3-year for September 23rd, and it's going to give me a zip file. Typically what I do is I drag and drop this to my desktop, close out of that. Then I'll go back to Lutheran Service Builder, and I'll go here to Settings and Import from LSBX file. And I'll pick September 23rd, Series B. It has already been imported. Yes, I have already done that in preparation for today, but that's what you do. Now what you can do is click on, you can't change Prayer of the Church, because right now this is just in there as a header. But if I go to Insert and then Element and select right below it, then I can go in here and type in September 23rd, and there we go. So that is a custom liturgy element, and it'll put that in there. Now I can go back to this, which is just strictly a caption, and delete that because I now have it in here. And now we have the Prayer of the Church. So that's a nice little trick that can make adding the Prayer of the Church easy. If you've been writing your own, maybe you're the pastor who writes his own, you can certainly still continue to do that, or you might want to use this. So that could save you time. Either way, there's a lot of good options. All right, so the passing of the pieces next. We don't do that at our church during the, before the offering. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. So you can sit for the offering. We have the offertory, the preface. Then we have the proper preface, which you can either put the full version or a truncated version, which just shows the beginning and the end, and the pastor fills in the middle. Since it's the pastor reading, that's kind of a good way to save space. The Sanctus, the prayer of thanksgiving, the words of our Lord. This one, you've got two options here, and they aren't named. It's just what's in the left column or the right column of the hymnal. So you can choose whichever one you want. Words of the Lord, the Pax Domini, Agnus Dei, and then we've got distribution. Now, distribution often is done in various ways, and you might want to put some information in there. You might want to put a communion statement in there. Either way, we have information in here that is helpful for the pastor and the communion assistants, but you may not need to put that in your bulletin. So it's great to include in the hymnal, but I don't know if I would want to print that every week. That's my personal opinion. So I'm going to go ahead and delete some of these. We're going to delete this rubric. We're going to delete this group. Oops, I deleted the whole thing. I can hit undo, which is something I didn't tell you about before. There's an undo up here. I'm going to delete left column. I'm going to delete that rubric. And I'm going to delete the dismissal, because all of that is said by the pastor or communion assistants. It's not a response that is put in the hymnal. All right, so then we've got the distribution hymns. And I'm going to choose one here, and we'll make it melody. Father, we thank you. And then we'll choose the Lamb for the next one. And again, the melody. All right, we're nearing the end. Thanks for bearing with me here. Next, we have either the Nunc Dimittis or Thank the Lord. Well, I'll go with the Nunc Dimittis because it's fun to say, and I'm probably pronouncing it incorrectly anyways. Post-communion collect, the benediction, and then we have added a hymn to depart. This is not something that's in the hymnal, but it is very common practice among our churches, and we had many requests for that. In fact, many people thought it was a mistake that we left it out. It's not actually in the hymnal, but we included it here because it's so common. And so I will go, again, you can search things by topic, and I will choose close of service. And this is one of my favorite ones, sent forth by God's blessing. Put the melody in there. How many stanzas? Only 2. Perfect. All right, so then you have your acknowledgements. Sorry, you can't touch the acknowledgements. Those have to stay in there. That's for copyright reasons. And now our service is done. So we're at about 3:35. I did a lot of talking. That took about 25 minutes, give or take a few minutes. We've got a service ready to go, and we can print this out now. Now let's customize it in even more detail. We've already done a number of things. We've removed numerous rubrics. We haven't changed anything around. I haven't felt the need to do that. But we've certainly made some selections to customize it for our church. We've changed some captions. We've removed things. Now, what if I want to use this time and time again? Well, up here, you have here order of service. I could switch my order of service to, say, Divine Service Setting 3, and it'll replace a lot of what I've done. But maybe I want to use this exact same kind of custom service in the future. All I have to do is click Save next to Order of Service, and it says My Divine Service. I forget which church I am supposedly using here, so I'm going to call it Resurrections Divine Service, Setting 1, Modified. And I'll save that. Now that becomes an order of service that I can use again and again. And the things like the propers or the hymns, the things where I had to make selections from, I'll still have to make selections those next time. It's not going to put Blessed Jesus at your word every time I use that. It's just going to put in the opening hymn or however that is phrased here. But it will remove the headings that we didn't want, and any captions that I change will change. It will change where I've got the sermon title. I'll need to go back in and change that, but I can reuse this over and over again. Now up here under settings and my worship resources, under my liturgies, you can go over here. I should go slower, I'm sorry. Sometimes I go too fast. Let me go back again. Under the cog here, the settings cog, under my worship resources, go down to my liturgies. And you'll see here, we've got resurrections. Oops, there we go. We had some other ones in there. So when I click on that one, it'll take a second sometimes to load. Maybe not usually that long. Well, it is working. There we go. It's going to show the service with all my changes, and I can insert elements. I can do more deleting elements. I don't think it's good to delete the confession absolution, but it's here that I could go and change things. So if we wanted to do something like say, all right, we're going to put this, I'm not sure why we would do that, but we're going to put this after. Maybe we would, yeah, I don't think we would actually do that. But we could if we wanted to. There you go. So you have something like that you could do. This is where you can go and change those individual elements. And this is your custom liturgy that you have here. And this can be, you know, drag and drop around that, put it underneath it. You can do a number of different things. Obviously, you want to use your best judgment, but you see here distribution is listed right there. It's the distribution hymns are listed as well. The hymns are not selected. They will be selected during that service. So you can make a number of different modifications here. You can even call this something different. If you want to call this communion hymn each time, you can go ahead and save that. We'll call this one communion hymn as well. So you can make those changes, and then when you go to use the liturgy again, those changes will take place. In fact, let's go down here and make sure that well, it probably didn't change it to communion hymn because we already selected hymns. All right. So if you have any questions about that, I was going to show you where the prayer came in. My worship resources under my common elements. It's not under my prayers. Although I think if I search for prayers, it would show up. Caption prayer of the church, shared role prayer of the church, because anything that we create is a common element like this prayer of the church, but you can go in here and do this. So if you wanted to say, well, we're going to put our synodical presence, I don't know who the district president is for everybody. Reverend Lee Hagan is our district president. I'll go ahead and put that. I think he spells it like that. I should know that, but that's okay. If you wanted to put in the name and change some of that, you could, and this is where you can do it. And then you can go and update it from time to time if you were doing a different one. But yeah, that's the way you can do that there. That is the custom prayer that we've inserted into the custom liturgy. So it won't be this exact custom element every time. All right, let's jump over here. I'll close out of this screen because we've got some more questions coming through. Thanks for asking those, everybody. I'll be back and answer those in a few moments, but for right now, we're going to go into bulletin formats. So up here under the settings cog, bulletin formats. Now remember, we did this under the default format. So if I click on default, that's what we're seeing. Now, pardon me, I am going to zoom out and I'm going to do a quick refresh on my screen. Sometimes in the preview for this, because it's trying to make these changes live, zooming in affects the look and feel of it. So if you have trouble seeing anything, or if I say something you can't see where it's at, I do apologize in advance, but it keeps the format a little better and gives you a bigger view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here to new format, and I'm basing it on a previous format. You got to start with something. So I'll click based on default. We'll call this Resurrections Regular Print Bulletin. All right, we'll start with there. On the far right, you have tabs, and you have three different tabs that you can choose from. First off, style. This is truly style sheet. It's just the font, the size, the spacing, the paragraph spacing. The next one is layout. This is all about what you're printing on. It's the paper, it's the size, the orientation, whether it's folder or not, what your margins are, all of that fun stuff. We'll look at that in a minute. And finally, the last thing is the content. You know how I switch things to have all of the hymns show the melody? Well, I did that for each one, but in my custom bulletin view, I can switch this and say all hymns should always show the melody. And I'll just put that there. And all liturgy should only show the text. That's already how it is. All propers, like these here, show the default caption. Or they could always show the caption. The default caption says show it if that element by default with the service that you're under displays it, but always shows every single caption for every single element, regardless of the order of service. All right, so those are a few things. The reference here under subcaption tells you to put the scripture reference there if it's available. Just like under hymns, the subcaption says stanzas, and under liturgy, it's page. Now you could say something like, I want to do LSB page. That doesn't work out as well for the Kyrie because LSB is already in there. Probably a bad example, but that's okay, you get the point. So if you wanted to say, what's the scripture reference for liturgy? So here, the Kyrie is from Mark 10:47. You could also say page, hashtag page, hashtag, and then the reference. So you could have both of those in there. And in our Help Center, you can find out more about these. Our Help Center is always located in the lower right with the I, and you can search for it there, or you can send the support team a message. All right, let's jump back over here to style. Now, I don't know how familiar you are with the concept of branding and style sheets for communicators. That's a big part of what we do. As pastors and administrators and music leaders, you may not have to think about that as much, maybe a bit more as an administrator. But if your church has a designated font that goes with the brand, it's always best to reinforce that branding through things like the bulletin. So what I'm going to show you next is how to make it look the way you want it to look, specifically from a style perspective, not from the content at all. So underneath the style part, there's a section, and you've got 6 different options: body, heading, caption, subcaption, rubric, and copyright. So let's go with caption first, because this is the one that's in here the most. Let's say our caption By the way, I have a laundry list of fonts that can be included. You may have a different set. It's based on what type of computer you're on, what services you've imported, all sorts of different factors. So if you're not seeing a font that you might want to see, what you can do, if it's already on your computer, if you know you have access and the rights to use the font, you can go in here and say, all right, I want to do Roboto. Roboto is a Google font, one of my favorites. So now you can see my caption change to Roboto, and as I click up, the size changes. That's pretty cool, but it's really close to the hymn. So then I go under paragraph spacing, and I say, all right, after each paragraph, give me a little bit of breathing room. Now, depending on how big your bulletin is, how much room you have, you may not have that luxury. I'll go back down to 12. There we go. All right, now let's go do some more things. The body should also be Roboto. There we go, and we're going to go to 11 for that. And then after the body, we've got the headings. We are not currently showing them, but just in case we ever want to, I'll go ahead and type in Roboto. And we'll make it bold and underline. All right, we're getting there. Caption. We could always make this caption a little bit bigger, I think. There we go. Subcaption should always be italicized, in my opinion. Change this to Roboto. Very good. Next, we have the rubrics, which actually means red, so we should have red rubrics. Whoops. You'd think by the fourth time I would have this down. Roboto. Okay, and then lastly, the copyright, which goes at the very bottom. Actually, I don't even think we have a sample of it displayed here. That's okay. So you can see that my spacing is looking a little bit better than what it was before, in my opinion. You can see that we've got the, those captions are awfully big now that I look at it. All right, we'll go down to 14. We'll save all of that. So now my regular print bulletin is in pretty good shape. I need to select the paper next. So I go to layout and I say, this is going to be on a legal size letter. And it's going to be folded in half and printed landscape. There you go. So we'll save that. And now for the big reveal, I'm going to exit out of this. Go back to my service. Go back to prepare bulletin. And click export docx file. And you'll see it's in the format or the width that I need. And then I got to move my mic to see my screen. Let's see. There we go. Where is that going to open? Oh, hopefully on this screen here. Very good. Well, that does that. I'm going to take a sip. Sorry for that short intermission. There we go. All right, so there is my export. Now, I went through that pretty quickly because I wanted to get to this export. Oops. Oh, if I enable editing. Why did my custom fonts didn't come over? Because I didn't change the formatting. Sometimes it's good for me to make mistakes during this presentation because I know it tells me somewhere that I didn't show it because I didn't talk about it or I didn't do it. But if I go up here to my bulletin format and go to Resurrection's regular print bulletin, now it's going to change to everything that I was looking for. The experience of highlighting over different elements, that all stays the same. The experience of changing out elements, but the look and feel and the page width have all changed. Now when I go to export, I can go to export docx file. I also have rich text format or HTML. We'll talk about those in a minute. I'll go to docx and we'll download that again. So I apologize for that, but I think that's a good mistake to make because it reminded me that I did not show you that export portion of it. So I'll click on that Word file. Now, downloading from the internet can take a second. It's not too bad, but it always puts this thing on here, which basically says there's something unsecure about this document. Either it's a bad file or it's never been secured, but it's been downloaded from the internet. So don't worry about that thing. You know it's safe. It's coming from us. We click Enable Editing. Now I have the bulletin that I've been building with the formatting that I need, and it's got some nice spacing in that too. And I can still go and adjust the spacing on whatever I need, but it's all right there ready for me to do this, and my usage has been tracked. So you don't have to worry about anything else with copyrights. That looks pretty good. All right, I think I'm gonna pause there, and then we're gonna get into some question and answers in a moment, but hopefully you got a good understanding of how to go about creating a custom worship bulletin with a number of different customizations, whether it be the liturgy or the individual elements or the format itself. And it wasn't that hard. I hope you didn't find it hard. I didn't find it hard. I've been doing this quite a while though, so for me it's not, it's kind of second nature. But if you have not already started, I invite you to start your free trial today at LutheranServiceBuilder.com. If you're one of those who are using Builder but have not moved to the online version, what you want to do next is set up a time to speak with a software consultant. And I'm going to go ahead and post this in the chat here. There we go. What I'd like you to do, if you are not currently using the online version, is to set up a time and speak with our software consultants by going to the link that I just shared. And during that conversation, we'll get you a new and updated license agreement to move to the online version. We'll align your subscription dates if needed. If you have a hymn license that's one date and a builder license that's another, we'll combine those to the same dates. We'll turn on access to the new builder, and we'll send instructions on how to get started. Lastly, they can answer any more question and answers you have about your unique situation. Now, it's again totally free to do this if you are a current subscriber. There's no additional fees. It's the same exact price as the current version, and it will always be the same exact price. We're going to continue to support version 2. We're going to discontinue support for version 1, which went out obsolete in 2008. So if you are not sure about moving online, but you think you might in the near future, go ahead and sign up. That's the best thing to do, is to get ready for that. You can still use, whoops, let me go here and go back to it. I didn't want you to have to sit through everything again. Whoops, wrong one. At the wrong direction. There we go. So you can still use Lutheran Service Builder 2 even after you convert online. This is just giving you your first chance to see the online product with your data. All right, now I'm going to go to my contact information, put that on the screen. We've got software support up there, and I'm going to get to some questions. So let's see what we've got here today. Thank you for asking these questions, by the way. David, it sounds like you just adopted Lutheran Service Builder. That is fantastic. Thank you for joining me. Linda is asking, is the online version available in Washington State? I haven't seen able to access it. Linda, absolutely, it is available anywhere. So you should be able to access it, but you do need to talk with our software consultant first so they can update your subscription and give you that access. So that might be part of the problem. You might not have that access. So again, call go to this website. Sorry, this is for support. You can call support, but they won't be very helpful with the access side of things. This is where you want to go to schedule a time, Linda, to set up a conversation with one of our software consultants who will get you up and running. All right, Jameson wrote and said he's already left, unfortunately, unless he came back in under a different account. How do you make the melody lines available in the bulletins? Sure, they're simply cool. Well, I'm glad you found this cool. Well, I did show that briefly, so hopefully Jameson saw that, but he's already gone now. So this is the melody line for the hymn, and you can click on melody is already clicked. You can click on none to not display any of it, text or melody. So I hope that answers your question, Jameson. All right, what else do we have here? How do you get the music for the hymns? I'm guessing that question usually implies not just the melody, but the full score. And we do not offer that as part of Builder. We don't offer the 4 parts for the hymns. So there's a few aspects of liturgy that have it, especially I believe in Divine Service Setting 3. That is not something we currently offer for all the hymns. And there's some copyright reasons for that. Some of it is that the files just aren't there in the exact format we need to put them in there, and there's a lot of work associated with that. So, but mostly copyrights. All right. That was from Jamie. Linda is also asking, how do you get rid of the verse numbers so they aren't printed in the bulletins? Well, unfortunately, that is something that will be printed in the, well, I should clarify. If you are talking about the hymns, the hymn verses or the stanza numbers do show. If you go over to content though, oh, actually I forgot, you can turn off the stanza numbers. It's only for the text though. You cannot turn off stanza numbers for the music. But if you're referring to the Bible verses, you can turn that off down here under propers and say, don't show Bible verses or verse numbers, and it just shows the readings. So I hope that answers your question. The next one is, with the psalm, is there a way to show a tone and pointing? Yes, I'm glad you asked that. I should have shown that before. Let me close out a bulletin formats. This is from Thomas. Where is my psalm? So the psalm by default should have your pointing on there, but you can then go and add in psalm tone up here. And you can turn the pointing on or off. There you go, right next to that. In that, so you select the psalm, then you go up to the top here and choose. Can you show excuse me, Felicia is asking, can you show how you brought over the zip file of the prayers again, please? Yes, like I said, it's a very popular question, so I like to cover that. If you go to LutheranServiceBuilder.com, we'll just type that in, LutheranServiceBuilder.com. That'll take you to our home page, and you scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you click on Downloads. Then you choose the service you want. We want 3-year lectionary on Series 28. That'll download a zip file. Zip file, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is a package of files. In this case, a package of 1. But when you click on it, it opens up like a folder and gives you this LSBX file. I recommend dragging and dropping to your desktop. That way you remember to delete it. And then you go into Lutheran Service Builder, go to the cog, and click Import from LSBX file. And there you go. And when you bring it in here, like now it'll tell me I already have it. When you bring it in here, then you go and insert it via a element. So a custom element, you can choose where to set it in the service, and then you go and select that. And so you would search for, probably the date is the best way to do that. So if we search for September 23rd, there it is. And that's how you'd put it in. So I hope that helps clarify that. We do have some videos available on how to do that in other webinars. David is asking, how do I switch between left and right columns again? Thank you. David, this is not exactly what you're asking for, but it's very similar. It's this blue bar here, and when you click the little arrow next to it, it expands and gives you different options. And then you can hover over that. When you select one, it closes the other one. So look for the blue bar on the left-hand side, your left-hand side. All right, Janie's asking, putting gradual in place of psalm. Well, actually, that's what I just did. That was good on my part. I wasn't looking ahead, but that's how you can switch it between them. All right. How do you use one custom liturgy as the basis for another? Christopher is asking that question. That's a very good question, Christopher. I believe the way you do it is you go to My Worship Resources, Liturgies, and you click on that. And I was thinking, oh, I know the best way to do it. The best way to do it is to then go to your service. I was thinking there was a clone button, but I forgot we have a different approach. You go to your service, you select that one, and then you click save. And this will give you another instance of that, and then you can go change it. So maybe it's Resurrections, Divine Service. Oops. Setting 1 modified. version 2, something like that. And now I can go and change that, but it's based off of my custom liturgy. All right, Felicia is asking, can you do undo modifications in the My Liturgy section? Yes, the whole My Worship Resources area should have the undo button. And if I'm mistaken, I apologize, but I believe all of those are in place because as you're making changes, you have to save them at the bottom. Well, I thought that had undo, but maybe it doesn't. I'll double check with the team why that is, that it doesn't have undo. You have undo when you're making text up here. It's just not in the order of the service. I'll double check with them on that. But if not, that's a good suggestion. Otherwise, you do have it on the content side of things, and you do have to save it. Oops, sorry, you have to save it in the lower right-hand corner before it takes effect. So there is some of that extra barrier of protection. All right, Dustin was saying, is it possible to get rid of the hymn number before each hymn? I'm okay with it on the right side, but the left is redundant. There's not a good way of doing that, Dustin, except for if you, let me go into formats, if you have something other than the name of the hymn. Oops. There we go, Bulletin formats. It's getting near the end of the day, as you can tell. I'm moving a little slower. There you go. So if you are under content and you go to hymns, the caption, you could choose to never show that, although that hides your sub caption. I would go with the default, and then you could just choose roll and say hymn of invocation, and then you can put reference and stanzas. Actually, is that page? Yeah, and you can say LSB, page, and stanzas. So it would not put the title of the hymn there. It would put the role of the hymn. The title includes the page number, which I understand can be a little bit cumbersome, but that's the way it's set up right now. All right. Oh, Christopher, I'm sorry. I'm just seeing this now. Can you zoom back in again? Hard for me to see even on my computer. Hopefully the verbal instructions were helpful for you. It's hard to, the preview screen starts getting all messed up when I'm zoomed too far in, but I'll zoom back in right now for these last few ones. I do apologize that I'm just seeing that now. All right. Felicia, you're asking, did I misunderstand? The online version is no additional charge if we already subscribe to the desktop version of LS Builder. You do not misunderstand. That is correct. We increased the price of Lutheran Service Builder in 2017, knowing that in 2018 we were releasing the new version and did not want a price increase. So the previous price increase had been 6 or 7 years ago. It had been a long time since we had increased it. And we're not going to increase the price again until 2019, end of 2019. So going into 2020. So your entire first year of this, as long as you start between now and the end of this year, the entire first year will be at the current price. Now, there might be some sub or prorated charges if you are switching subscriptions around, because we may choose to prorate it and credit you with the difference, or prorate and charge you for the difference if we have to align your hymn license and your builder license. Or if you are adding a license, like adding hymn license or adding Concordia Organist, that might be an additional fee, but the same products are the same across both of them. All right. Couple more questions and then I'm gonna wrap it up here because I'm already past time, but you're hanging in there, so I wanna make sure to answer these for you. So Kay is saying, can we print pastor and people instead of P and C? Is this customizable? Well, right now it's not customizable in a bulk way. However, what you could do is if you have a order of the service, whoops, let's close out of here. If you have under My Worship Resources, My Liturgies, and you go to your liturgy, you could go into each of these and change that. So you could go into here and say, I don't remember if I can just, oh yeah, just click this clear responsorial, and say pastor and people. And it would be element by element, and then you'd save that for that liturgy. Now, I know that's kind of a hassle, and we're considering adding in kind of a global setting for that. We just don't have it right now, and there's not a definite plan to put it in place, only because it's a pretty large project without as big of a bang for our buck for that. So we've got a few other things that are even better than that are coming first. But just know that it's on our radar, and there is an option for it right now. All right, Linda did say you came back. Sorry, it's showing me it in a queue, so I didn't get to see this, but saying Bible verses. So good, I was able to show you how to remove the Bible verses. That is, for just a quick refresher, under bulletin formats, under content. So I'm zoomed in now, so this can help too. For I believe it was Christopher who asked for that. If you go under your bulletin formats content, go down under propers, you can choose to not show verse numbers, just like you can choose to not show stanzas. I don't know if I finished that thought before, so I'm glad you brought that up. All right, let's see. Oh, and Dustin's saying, at least for the hymns with the melodies, he says, Peter, I can get around the verses not being able to be hidden by drawing a white box over the numbers on the score. Or primarily in Publisher, and this is helpful if you're using several selected verses and not all verses. Yeah, that is a very good point on that, Dustin, that it can be confusing to the congregation if you have a long hymn and you have, 1, 4, 7 or something like that, or some hymns, I forget which ones specifically, but they're tied to the day in the church year. They bring in a separate verse number into verse 2, and that can be confusing to have it say verse 2, whereas in the hymnal it's verse 17 or something like that. So there is some good use for that. The challenge for us in updating that is that right now all of those images are fixed as images. So in order to do that ourselves, we'd have to go and split all those images and create new ones. It's just a time-consuming endeavor, and we've got some higher priorities I think will be more beneficial to all of our customers. So that's why we haven't, but that's a very good workaround. All right, I think that is about it. A few last questions. Suggestion on font size and fonts that are best to use. Thomas, I've got a lot of opinions on that. Typically for a good bulletin, I'd say between 11 closer to 14 font size is good. Now it depends on how much paper space you want. I would recommend a larger piece of paper. If you're trying to get into 8.5 by 11, then I'd go with that 11 size. And for a font style, Times New Roman, Arial, those are some of the basics. I like Roboto. Roboto is one that Google provides. It's their Android font. It's meant to be very readable. There's a few others like Open Sans that Google provides, but I'd say your best bet is to stick with some of the basics, Times New Roman, Arial, Tahoma, Helvetica, depending on if you're on a Mac. So that would be my recommendation. Let's see. Sarah is asking if I'm related to Dustin Frank. He does technology in the education world. No, Sarah, I do not know a Dustin in my family. So it sounds like we might be interested in the same things, but we are not related. All right, and the last question, which I think is a good one to wrap up on. If you subscribe to Creative Worship, you also can download the LSB files and import. Those services use the pastor people formats, however, you don't get to use your customized list of elements. Christopher brought that up, and I think that's a great point to end on, because Creative Worship is another option for some more custom elements. And like he says, we use the pastor people. And if you go to music.cph.org. That's the shortest to type in, and you go up under worship. Creative Worship is there. And Creative Worship is a tool we've had available. It's a subscription service. In fact, we probably need to remove the disc because we've moved it online. We still sell the disc, but we're going to be moving it into Builder as kind of an add-on where you can export or get the information right out of Builder. And there's a lot of different things in there too. So, but that's a great tool that has custom worship elements, and they all have LSB files. So Christopher, thank you for that. I appreciate that suggestion. And I think that wraps up our questions. I know I went 10 minutes over, I apologize, but you're still with me, so you're clearly interested, and I think that that's a good sign. So let me put my contact information up there one last time. Feel free to reach out to me or our support team with any other follow-up questions that you have. But otherwise, I thank you for joining me today, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day. Talk to you later. Bye.